Hey, what's going on, guys? JTK here. Welcome on back to another video. In this one today, thought we'd bring back the old kind of style of top 10s, but instead this is going to be a top 5 because this one I couldn't really find 10 things for. But in this video, we're going to be doing the top 5 most overrated maps. Now, these maps, they're great, but some people will like to put them on like the top 5, sometimes the top 10, and I don't think they're that great. That's kind of what overrated means. A map that's like, it's good, but people think it's like up there with some of the best. And for this video, there's going to be no specific criteria like what I do with the weapons or whatnot. Just going to be like the maps, like normal video style. And yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Alright, now coming up for our first map, this is going to be going to 9. Now, 9 was released in BO4. It was an on-disc map along with Void to Despair, Blood of the Dead, and Classified, if you're going to count that. It's kind of a bonus map. But 9 itself, it was a really good map, and during the time, I would say, out of all the launch maps, it was probably the best that came with the game. But then the DLC started coming out and people still had the impression that 9 was the best map in the entirety of Black Ops 4. Now, I don't really agree with that. For me personally, I think Ancient Evil is a better map. Heck, I even think Target or Toten is up there to beat 9 in terms of just the way that I like to play through maps and whatnot. So for that, I don't really think it's up there in terms of great maps. It still is a good map. I'd probably place it in like the top 15, maybe even like the top 10. But to put it up there with the greats and the best above BO4 maps like Ancient Evil, some people even like putting it above some other maps that we're going to get onto here in a bit. But overall, I do like 9. I just have a couple problems with it. First of all, there is way too many mini bosses on the map. I hate the executioners, the brawlers. Individually, they're okay, but when you start stacking them up in like the later rounds, like when you get to the 20s, the 30s even, they just become way too hectic. There's just way too many of them. I do like the map layout a lot. I think this is probably one of the best when it comes to map layouts and just maps in general. I like how there's a little spawn area and there's a lot of things that you can do there. Great training spot. You always come back to it. And I like how the perk statues are like emphasized a lot for the locations on the map. Just really makes sense, really flows nicely. But I don't really think it's that good, especially when the Wonder Weapon as well is just kind of underwhelming. Don't really like that. But overall, I would say it's a great map. Way too overrated though, so for that, I'm going to be putting it at our number 5 spot. Alright, now coming up next on our list, this is going to be going to Origins. Now, Origins is a really good map. I know a lot of people are probably going to hate me for this one. A lot of people always love to put Origins in like the top 3, top 5. Heck, sometimes it's even their number 1 favorite, like if you're the Smith Plays or whatever. But overall, I do think Origins is like a great map to some extent. I do like doing the Easter egg from time to time. It's just, I have to psych myself out a lot whenever I do load up into Origins. I know that it's going to be like a 5-hour long game whenever I do decide to play it, and for that reason, I can't really put it up there, especially through a casual player's point of view. It's just not that good of a map. I would much rather play something else that's a little bit more casual if I'm feeling in that mood. Granted, I do think there is some really cool aspects. Obviously, Origins is packed with a lot of content and whatnot. You have like the Iron Fist, you have the staffs, you have the opening of the gateways, whatever. And overall, yeah, there's just a lot of content on Origins, but I don't think it's going to be up there with one of my favorites. Sometimes I just really hate the mud. Moving around the map just feels really tedious as well. And I'll be honest, I don't really like building the staffs most of the time. Every single time I do build the staffs, I just find it to be really tedious. I find myself just running around the map, keeping one zombie alive for like 40-30 minutes if I'm not doing a speedrun, and then that's just kind of annoying, kind of defeats the purpose of zombies in general. It's kind of a turning point for zombies. Black Ops 2 Origins was kind of that map that made zombies less of a co-op, fun, casual experience for the casual players, and made it more of a hardcore Easter egg hunt puzzle finder for just those hardcore players that want to go further above and beyond. And for that, it's an incredible map. I still do love Origins to death, but some people like to put this map up there just because everyone else does, and for that, I don't really appreciate it that much, especially because this map has horrible transportation. Nobody ever uses the tank to get around the map. Nobody ever uses that gramophone stuff. It just is annoying because you have to leave it in one area all the time. You have to make sure that you pick it up every single time you leave the tunnels as well, and I just don't really like building the staffs in general. Like I said before, it's just not my kind of cup of tea. So for that, I do have to put it on this list. Now, coming up next on our list, this is going to be going to Mob of the Dead. Now, Mob of the Dead was a really good map when it came out. I think people just overrated it a lot because the previous maps were Transit and Die Rise, and when you compare Mob of the Dead to those two maps, obviously it's going to be put really, really high up on their list. I know it saved a lot of people from making content and whatnot. I know we probably wouldn't be talking about zombies right now if it wasn't for this map, so I do appreciate it for a lot. I do really like the atmosphere as well. I think the atmosphere is incredible on Mob of the Dead. That's kind of the main thing that I look at it. It's the only zombies map that tells a really in-depth, deep story, and I can always appreciate Mob of the Dead for that. That's kind of what got me into zombies in the first place. The story specifically was Mob of the Dead. I like the idea of like these mob gangsters trying to escape from an island, and then they're stuck in a cycle, and the only way to break it is to kill one of them. So that's just a really cool story, but overall, I don't think it innovates much in terms of gameplay, especially when it comes to the Easter egg. All it is turning on the pack-a-punch 5 times. So I can't really say that it's a great Easter egg. I also really don't like the way that the high rounds work on Mob of the Dead. The high rounds can just be really annoying to get on this map. You have to solely rely on traps. It's a very close quarters map. The Vitrolic Withering doesn't really help you past round 30, past round 40, and the Brutus, from most part, can be really, really annoying to deal with sometimes. I find it annoying how he goes around the map and locks stuff up, and then you have to pay extra points to unlock it and whatnot. That can just be really annoying, especially if you're a casual player. I don't really think Mob of the Dead is going to be up there as one of your favorites, even though a lot of hardcore players like to say that Mob of the Dead is really good for casuals. I just think otherwise. So for that, I do love Mob of the Dead, but it does deserve a spot on this list because I do think it's a little bit overrated. Alright, now with these next 2 spots, these are the ones that I'm really serious about when I say overrated. A lot of people like to put these in like the top 5 when they don't even deserve the top 10 in my opinion. Next up is going to be Call of the Dead. Now I know a lot of people like this map, especially Mr. T-Lexify fans. Love you to death. But I don't think Call of the Dead is up there with some of the greats. Obviously, the first problem that comes to mind is just the map overall just looks horrible. I don't like the way that the map looks. There's way too much fog over the place. It covers up the entire map, just looks really, really bad in general. Definitely a letdown in terms of just the way that the map looks overall. The second problem is the lack of good weapons. You have the VR11, which is hot garbage, completely useless unless you're playing on co-op. Then it's somewhat useful when you shoot your friends with it and then they get the insta-kill effect, which is pretty cool, unique, but if you're in solo, you're never going to be using this wonder weapon whatsoever. And you also have the scavenger, which is pretty decent. I do like it, but the problem with it is that you have to wait for the bullets to explode, which can be really, really annoying, especially if you're doing high rounds and whatnot, and they don't even do that much damage. And the splash damage on them is ridiculous. You have to have PhD Flopper with you all the time, and it can just be annoying running around with this thing when you shoot it on the floor, and then it deals damage to yourself, which just doesn't feel good as a wonder weapon in general. And the last point that I have is George. Now, George, I personally don't have too much of a problem with, but I can see the argument for people that do. He constantly follows you around the map. It makes it impossible to camp, which is really, really bad for the casual audience. But I do personally like him a bit. When you do kill him, he does drop a perk, and if you did the Easter egg, he does give you a Wonder Waff, which is a pretty decent Easter egg, I would say. But overall, I wouldn't say that Call of the Dead is up there with some of the greats. There's just way too many flaws with the map in general. It's an okay map. I like to load onto it from time to time just to have a little bit of fun, but I wouldn't say it's one of the best. So for that, it deserves a spot on this list. Now, coming in at our number 1 spot for the best zombies map of all time, Kino Toten Black Ops 1. Thank you, Lex, for ruining an entire generation of zombie fans. But anyways, obviously everyone knows that Kino Toten is overall just a really overrated map. It's decent, and some people like to put it in like the top 15, the top 10. I'm talking about the casual people who only load onto zombies once in their entire life, and they put it at the number 1 spot because they just figured out that the training spot on the map, which is the stage, is a pretty good spot to train at, so they think it's obviously the best map of all time, when in reality, everyone who's ever played zombies for more than 2 minutes knows that it's not. Kino Toten is only a really good map for the casual audience. It's a really simple map layout, really easy for players to just jump in, quickly understand how zombies works, how to play zombies, what the entire concept of the mode is, and to just have a fun time. For that, I do think Kino Toten is definitely a really good map. But obviously, there's a lot lacking, especially in towards the later maps, especially like Shadows of Evil or Origins. You compare those maps to Kino to Toten. Kino to Toten just seems very lacking and behind the curve. And in my opinion, I do think that Der Riese is an overall much better map compared to Kino to Toten. I find Der Riese to have a better map layout, a better way to turn on the Pack-a-Punch, and just better weapons and layout overall. I do also hate the Kino to Toten mini boss, which is the Nova Crawlers. I hate the Nova Crawlers. Every single time I do play the map, they're just my least favorite thing about it. Overall, I do like Kino. Definitely not the best map of all time, and if you do put it at number 1, you're probably suffering from brain damage, but that's besides the point. Overall, though, I would say that Kino to Toten is definitely the most overrated map of all time and is deserving of our number 1 spot on this list. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up this video for today. If you did enjoy, definitely leave a like, subscribe, do all that. Leave your comments down below if you want to see me do any other type of videos. Check out the description as well for the Comfy Cushion podcast, Joseph and Lucian's TikTok as well. They're going to start doing YouTube, so I might put that down there too if they are starting it during that time. And yeah, I got nothing much else to say, so peace.